I want to talk about two of the most radical economic thinkers of all time, the ones that no textbook ever mentions. When we teach economic history, the story usually begins with the familiar names: Smith, Ricardo, Mill, Marshall, Keynes, Friedman. They're presented as the central pillars of the subject, the thinkers who shaped the discipline and whose ideas define what counts as serious economics. If we broaden the frame a little, we might include Marx, E.F. Schumacher, Elinor Ostrom, or the ecological and feminist schools that challenge orthodoxy. Yet even these voices are often treated as interesting edges rather than the main line of thought, and almost all of them actually still operate inside the same basic framework that orthodox economics has set for the field. What never appears in this narrative are the figures who shaped the moral imagination of half the world. No course in economic history includes the Buddha or Jesus. The assumption is that they have nothing to do with markets, production, debt, or the flow of value. They're placed in an entirely separate category. Their teachings are framed as personal or spiritual guidance, at best, a set of ethical reminders that might inspire individuals, but have nothing to say about the structure of an economy. That view is profoundly mistaken. These are not polite spiritual figures offering gentle advice for a quiet life. These are thinkers who blew straight past the limits of the orthodox model. Their ideas are so fearless, so unrestrained, that they read almost like the work of people who stepped out of ordinary consciousness altogether and saw the entire economic structure from a completely different plane. There's an energy in their teachings that feels almost rebellious, as if they looked at the world we take for granted and said, with absolute calm, that we have built our lives on a mistake. They set out economic insights that overturn the whole conventional framework, and that's exactly why they're never mentioned. These were not calm instructors offering soothing lessons for the soul. These were visionaries who walked far beyond the boundaries of ordinary thought. Their ideas don't simply challenge the orthodox model, they make it look small. They speak with the confidence of people who've glimpsed reality from a vantage point that the rest of us barely understand. There's something unsettling in their clarity, something almost disruptive, as if they broke open the surface of everyday life and revealed the hidden workings beneath. When you read them carefully, you feel that they're not reforming the economic system, but exposing it. Their insights carry the force of revelation. They don't adjust the framework, they sweep it aside, and that's exactly why they're pushed out of the official story. If even a fraction of what these two teachers said is true, then they offered one of the most radical critiques of economic life ever articulated. They set out a vision of human needs, human motivations, and human community that challenges every central claim of orthodox economics. The Buddha taught that craving creates suffering, that attachment tightens the grip of fear, and that liberation begins with a transformation of desire itself. In modern terms, he questioned the idea that consumption leads to satisfaction. He rejected the assumption that people are driven by self-interest alone. He described an economy of sufficiency, not accumulation, and an idea of wealth that begins with peace of mind rather than possessions. Jesus spoke constantly of money. He warned against stores of treasure, against the illusion that wealth brings security. He argued that generosity is not a side virtue, but the foundation of life. In modern terms, he challenged the belief that prosperity comes from personal accumulation rather than shared abundance. He described an economy built on trust, compassion, forgiveness of debt, and the release of fear. He insisted that the real cost of greed is the damage it does to relationships and to the soul. Both teachers placed community above accumulation. Both saw that fear of scarcity produces violence. Both argued that freedom is found not through greater control of the world, but through inner transformation. These are economic claims, not decorative sentiments. And here is the real irony. Many people who live as Christians or Buddhists still live inside the logic of orthodox economics. Their daily lives are shaped by the ideas of competition, productivity, scarcity, and personal gain. Their spirituality becomes an activity at the edge of life, something pursued in private moments, while the economy is treated as a separate and untouchable reality. Yet Jesus and the Buddha both described a complete economic worldview. They spoke about value, security, fear, sufficiency, desire, work, and the conditions for human flourishing. They spoke about what breaks societies apart and what binds them together. They spoke about the movement of energy through human communities. In modern language, they described a conscious economy. They weren't simply offering moral advice. They were proposing a different model of how human beings live together, a model that challenges the central assumptions of the economic story that dominates our lives. I would just like to say that I hope I haven't caused any offense to any Buddhists or Christians. I'm not religious in the formal sense. I don't belong to a tradition, and I don't approach these ideas through doctrine. But I do try to follow a spiritual path that draws on the teachings of these great figures. I take their insights as I find them. For me, they're observations about human nature, fear, desire, community, and justice. Once you set aside the layers that human institutions have added over time, what remains is a set of truth about how we live and how we might live better. These truths speak directly to the foundations of economic life. It's time to recognize the truth, I think. Jesus and Buddha were economists, and their message, if taken seriously, would transform everything we think we know about the economy. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider liking and subscribing. I'd be very grateful for that. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.